Have you guys noticed how hard it is to hate on the bad guys in movies these days? I mean, I really, that was one of my favorite part of the movies where I could really hate on the villain, the bad guy, and really rejoice when they get what's coming to them, right? Like really have a good time with it. But now they're telling all the origin stories of these villains, and now we're all feeling sorry for them. Like look at, like Elphaba, she was a wicked witch of the East. Maleficent, the Grinch, Magneto, look at them. Look, they're adorable. They're all just, holy cow. So then I'm thinking, well, maybe they're not all that bad. And my next thought is, what? They were totally evil. Let's not forget that. Everybody that's evil was cute once, okay? All right, even you. So I think we have this. Here's the problem. I think we might have this agreed upon idea that if we can explain the horrible things we do, then that makes the horrible things not so horrible anymore. And that's a horrible way of thinking. At least to me it is. If we agree together that there are justifiable reasons for us to be awful people, then everybody in the world is going to find their reason for being an awful person. I was mistreated as a child. The man kept me down. Dad never hugged me. By the way, I'm one of the victims of the Best Dad Ever shirt fiasco. But I'm not going to wear it while I'm preaching because my shirt would actually say, I tried, That's my shirt. So the thing is, here's the danger. We can get really good at finding reasons that we are the way we are. But that's not the main issue in your life. A lot of our life right now is built around this, why did I turn out the way that I turned out? And we're always pointing backwards, right? We're always pointing at somebody else or somebody let us down, whatever it is. That's not the main issue in your life. While it may help you understand how you got here, it does nothing to help you change. Because as much as we hate to hear it, others have faced what we faced and didn't use it as an excuse for what they became. Ouch. We don't want our lives to be just one long explanation of why we turned out the way we turned out. Instead, we want it to be an amazing story of how we faced struggles and how we leaned into truth and we leaned into Jesus and we grew and we changed. But the first part of this is going to hurt, and that's where the prophets come in. We've said during the beginning of this series, the Intentionals, that every prophet was an intentional preview of a promise fulfilled in Jesus. So the Old Testament and the New Testament are not disconnected. They are very connected. They are they quote each other. I mean, they don't quote each other all the time. The Old Testament rarely quotes the New Testament. But the New Testament often quotes the Old Testament and builds this really strong bridge. Everything that we see in the prophets, when we come to the end of the Old Testament, all those books that a lot of us never read and we don't spend a lot of time on, we're going to intentionally focus on them for the next few weeks. So, welcome. My name is Lance. I'm one of the pastors here at Reality. If you are a first-timer, you're already one of us. You're already a Reality person. We're so glad you chose to be here today. And I want to tell you that we do something called Q&R at the end. I think we might be having trouble downloading our app right now. I keep on saying, download the app, but then somebody showed me, that doesn't work. So borrow a friend's phone, and you can ask a question at the end of the service, and we'll get to as many of them as we can, and then we'll answer the rest on a podcast that'll come. Today is Baptism Day, and I really do encourage you, if you've never been baptized, to give some thought to that during this time together. So, we don't want our lives to be just one long explanation of how we turned out. And the reason for that is this. Because if that's the way it is, we're going to ensure that we're the same person all the way through, just with a very good reason for why we turned out that way. We have to wake up. And that's where prophets come into our life. That's where a truth teller is needed. That's where somebody who can just love you enough to tell you what's really going on. And nobody has fun, by the way, doing this, if anybody's doing it right. Least of all the prophet. We're going to look at a prophet. His name is, I've always said Amos, but then I heard a guy smarter than me, and he said Amos. And that makes me feel smart, so I might interchange the two while I'm preaching, okay? I don't know what I'm going to say. But I've always said Amos, because I've never said, I love these cookies, Famos Amos cookies. That's weird. But his name actually means burden. It means like a weight. I mean, that's quite a name to give a baby. Must have been a heavy baby when he was born. You guys gave me a polite giggle on that one. The 9 o'clock crowd did nothing. I love you better. He's from this village south of Jerusalem. It's called Tekoa, okay? And it's really not far from Bethlehem, which I think is interesting because he was a sheep herder. Actually, not really a shepherd. He was kind of a manager of these people. And it's very possible that he's around 760 BC. It's very possible that the great-great-great-great-great-grandkids of people that worked for Amos were actually the shepherds that got the initial word that Jesus was born. How about that? So Amos is there in Tekoa. And he also says he's a dresser of sycamore trees, kind of a unique fruit that they had to poke a hole in to make it ripen faster, a very specific thing that you had to work really hard on. In other words, he was not some sort of country know-nothing. He wasn't just, somebody who didn't know. Well, he was intelligent, a businessman. He owned his own business. And he wrote in the best Hebrew, some people say, in the whole Old Testament. So, and here's something amazing. At least I thought it was amazing. They've actually been able to date Amos very accurately. And people disagree on this, but because of how he dates his own writing, he said, at the very beginning, he says, 2 years before the earthquake, when Jeroboam II was king of Israel, the northern kingdom, when Uzziah was king of the southern kingdom. And so, and there's this earthquake that everybody knows about, and an eclipse that happened along the same time. And they think that they've been able to date this book June 15th, 760 BC. That's today. That's today. So how weird is it that when I'm doing my study for this, we had already picked out, we're going to do Amos on June 15th, and sorry, it got to me. I got the spiritual goosebumps. It was a whole thing for me. But here's the thing. He lives in Judah. Show the map. He lives in Judah, down there near Jerusalem. It's not on there. But, and Israel's a little bit north of Judah. This is the area that he's preaching in. And who is he preaching to? He's preaching to a nation that's doing well. I mean, they're wealthy. Everything's going well. They've actually expanded their territory because this big kingdom of Assyria defeated their main enemy, Syria. Yeah, it was Assyria and Syria. And is a negation of one, so they must have really hated each other. You'll get that later. Anyway, Syria is defeated, and so Israel expands their kingdom a little bit. They're doing well. They're militarily, they're strong. Politically, they're doing well. They've got a lot of spirituality, a lot of very religious people. We'll talk more about that later. It's important for us to realize that Israel thought they were doing right, and their evidence was things are going fine. We're paying our bills. We're happy. Everybody's doing well. Why in the world would we even be concerned? We're comfortable. We're at ease. And then Amos shows up. He walks to Samaria and he observes them. That's the capital city in Israel. And he looks around. He attends feasts. He attends funerals. And he gets sick. And this is what he says in the beginning of Amos. He says, "The lion roars from Zion." That's a wake-up call. If you're in a tent and you're on safari and you hear a lion roar, it's wake-up time. It's like pack up and move. So he's saying there is going to be judgment coming on this region. And what he starts doing at first makes the Israelites, they love it. That makes them smile. Because Amos starts out his judgment thing and he starts picking on people around them. So if you want to talk football with me, and you come up to me and you say, "Don't you hate the Eagles?" then I'm in. I want to have a part in that conversation because I do not like the Philadelphia Eagles. Any Eagles fans in here? I love you. I just don't like the team. I do love you. But I will be in on that conversation. Well, that's what Amos starts doing. He picks out, go back to that map again. Well, he starts out with Damascus, and he says, "Oh, God's going to judge Damascus." And everybody in Israel is like, "Yeah. Heck yeah, they're sinners. They always do the wrong thing." And then he goes down and he talks about Ammon. And he says, 3 things I won't forgive them for. 4 I will never forget. And it just keeps on this pattern of 3 and 4. And basically, that's a Hebrew way of saying they sin again and again. And Israel's listening to this. They're like, oh, yeah, heck yeah. Judge Ammon. Yeah, they need it. Judge Moab. Moab, they would sacrifice kids by laying them on a heated tongue. They would pass their children on to their God and sacrifice their firstborn. Yes, judge Moab. Heck yeah. And then Edom. Edomites, they hated them almost more than anybody else. And then Gaza. But they didn't see what was happening. What was actually happening is that Amos was drawing this spiral, and it was getting closer and closer. Finally, he gets to Judah. That's the southern kingdom. And they're like, we don't really hate them, but okay, you can judge them. We see what they're doing. And then it comes all the way around, and boom, right there in the center, most of the book is about Israel, the northern kingdom. So, spirals closing in, accusations against all the neighbors, but then the worst accusation of all. You guys in Israel who think you're so distinct from Damascus and Ammon and Edom and Judah, you think you're so different, you're so above. You know what the truth is? I can't tell you apart. You have been fit into the mold, and I can't distinguish who's who anymore. So what is Amos trying to do? Oh, actually, yeah, I need to tell you about that, but I'm not. Ask a question about that. That's fascinating stuff right there. What is Amos trying to do? He's trying to wake them up to reality. And don't we all need that sometimes? Isn't it so easy to look around you and figure out the problems of everybody in your life? Have you ever sat around with people and just figured out everybody else's problems? It's fun. It actually is a lot of fun. And that's what Israel was doing. They were figuring out everybody else's problem. They weren't taking a look in the mirror. And Amos is saying, you look just like them. Did you know that normally when something really gets on your nerves, like they're arrogant. If you hear anyone who always says, they're so arrogant, they're so conceited, you know why you can pick out conceit so readily and so easily? Because you're conceited, that's why. Because it doesn't bother humble people to hang around with conceited people. Because they think, like me, all this best dad ever. Are we going to wrestle for this, by the way, in the end? Is there going to be some sort of no-holds-barred cage match at the end of this thing? I'm not entering, because I'm humble, see? They're thinking life is great, and Amos is saying this is sick. This is a weight on Amos's back. It's burdening him. He tells them why. And guys, it's not just about their theology. It's not just what they believe about God. It's not just that they're not having good worship services. He's saying you're living just like everybody else. Some of what he says, you sell the righteous for money. They were capturing people, good people, selling them for money. You clean out those who've done nothing wrong. You take from people who can't fight back. They were so greedy for real estate that they were jealous, Amos says. They wanted more land and more land and more land. They were jealous of the dust that fell down onto the heads of people mourning their own poverty. They used to have this thing that they did, and when they were mourning, they would make a show of it, and they would throw ash and dust up in the air, and it would land on them. And these people were so greedy that they were like, I'll buy that. I want that piece of property right there. That's how greedy they were. That's a really harsh thing to say to someone. They have absolutely nothing but lust for more and more and more. And it was causing the Israelites to see people in their circle as just resources and not people. They were users. They weren't lovers. They didn't love people. They just saw them as a means to an end. This reminds me of the early slave trade in the U.S., dragging people from their homes, transporting them across an ocean where many of them died, and making them into slaves. It's just a gaping wound in Israel. It's a festering sort of thing that it has a stench to it, and Amos can't stand it. See, one of the things that happens when a nation turns its back on God is that when you speak truth, you start to look really weird. When you follow God in a nation that's turned their back on God, you look really weird, and you get mocked and shamed publicly sometimes. When you change basic morality, and when you change and twist what's right and what's wrong, then nothing is too far anymore, and that's what's happening in Israel, right? Relational morality is basically canceled. How you treat people doesn't matter anymore. You can just make a show of your religion. Any idea about what to do sexually is a good one. And you're like, Lance, this was 760 BC. They didn't know about sex back then. The immoral practice of taking someone else, here's what they would do. This is kind of, I'm sorry about this part. When somebody owed you money, they would lend you their best suit of clothes, their best set of clothes, as collateral. And you only had one best set of clothes. And they would take that best set of clothes, they would take it to the temple, and they would lay it down, and they would lay on it during their religious practices. And you can look up their religious practices later, but they would use someone else's collateral to do it, to cushion them against the floor. This was disgusting. He said, you made the Nazarites drink wine. They're not supposed to even touch grapes. You made them drink wine, and when the prophets told you to stop doing that, you told them to shut up. You know why we do this? Here's the truth, and this is truth about Israel, it's truth about us. People who love lies hate the truth. You want to get somebody mad? Not on purpose, by the way. We got enough people trying to stir up things on social media. But you want to get somebody mad, tell them the truth even in love. People who love lies hate the truth. And if your throat is getting tight right now, maybe you need to figure out, what lie am I believing that I'm scared that somebody's going to point out? Because what they were telling to Amos was, shut up or line up. Even better if you can make it look religious or Christian. If you can turn the lie into something that sounds Christian. In verse 13 he says, he was weighted down with all of this sin, with all of this injustice, with all of this stuff that just making a mockery of who God really was, because they were supposed to be repping God, but they were completely blending in. He's weighted down, tottering, wobbling under the weight of what you're putting on him. And he's saying, hey guys, judgment is coming. Judgment's on the way, and it's going to be awful. You're in the calm, but a storm is coming. It's going to be destructive. The weight of what you're putting on me is going to eventually break. The illusion of safety is going to be gone. And they weren't even a little concerned about it. He preached in front of them, but there's no record of anybody going, what should we do? He got a collective yawn from Israel when he preached in Samaria, and then when he went down to their southern temple in Bethel. So he gets a little personal. Maybe you would too. And in chapter 4, verse 1, he says, listen to me, you fat cows. Whoa. You want to wake up a room? Yeah. Listen to me. Literally, he's saying, and people, this is, by the way, this is before body shaming was, they even knew it was a bad thing. Actually, you need to understand this. He's not body shaming. Fatness has not always been a symbol of too much, of bad health. It was a symbol in this case of excess and comfort and wealth and prosperity. So he's saying to them, listen up, you fat cows. You wives, he does go on. He says, you women who oppress the poor, crush the needy, and are always calling your husbands, bring us another drink. So he might as well have said, listen up, you real housewives of Papillion. Wake up to reality. You keep saying, oh, wouldn't it be great if God would show up and the day of the Lord would finally arrive? You don't even know what you're asking. You don't want God to show up. Right now, in the way that you are, you don't want God to show up. He's given you chance after chance after chance, trying to wake you up. Famine came, locusts came, trying to wake you up. And the saddest verse in Amos is, yet you did not return to me. Have you ever been on that long walk away from God? And warning sign after warning sign show up in your world? And you choose to ignore it? You think, but he loves me. But I won't be broke. I'll get by. And then eventually the consequences of your own actions come up and bite you. Yet you did not return to. I gave you chance after chance. The circumstances around your world were just like a neon sign saying, turn back. This is going to be awful. Don't go there. Yet you did not return to me. They just went about their showy religion. They just put on the production, right? And Amos says that God feels this way about all the production. He says, I hate all your show. and your pretense, the hypocrisy of your religious festivals and your solemn assemblies. I will not accept your burnt offerings or your grain offerings. I won't even notice all your choice peace offerings. Away with your noisy hymns of praise. I will not listen to the music of your harps. And let's stop there. Well, then what does he want? I mean, we put on our best. We mixed the sound well. We had lighting. I mean, there was a band. They played. We sang together. Some of us were raising our hands. We were shouting. We were having a blast. It was an incredible worship experience. Or we went to this incredible Bible study, and we learned like the original language and what that word really meant. And I just feel like I know God on a deep level now. Here's what God is saying. I am intellectual and I am an experience, but I'm more than just an intellectual and experiential God. Here's what we need to discover, and this has been true from the beginning to now. God is an ethical and moral God. How you live matters. And He watches us. Not in just a desire to judge you, but in a desire that you would live the way that's actually going to give you joy and freedom and purpose. It matters to Him. God is not just intellectual or experiential. He's ethical and moral. And this community watches us as well. They see us. Wake up to reality. Are you at ease? Are you secure? Are you comfortable? Well, Amos says, God says, I hate the arrogance of Jacob, or I hate the arrogance of Israel. You guys, you're walking around like you're the VIP. I'm the VIP. You're my invited guest, God says, and I don't want to hang out with you anymore. You've overstepped. You've embarrassed me. You're desperate for recognition and a lot of stuff. Well, don't put my name on it. Don't put my name on the way you're living. Wake up to reality. And then God gives Amos 5 visions. One of them, the first one was locusts. He gives him a vision of locusts. Oh, man, this one's too important for me to skip. What does God want instead of all that stuff? I want to see a mighty flood of justice, an endless river of righteous living. He's ethical, He's moral, and He wants to see us live that way. God gives Amos a vision of locusts where they just come in and eat all the harvest, and Amos prays, oh God, we're so small, don't do that to us. How could we survive? And God relents. And then a vision of fire. A fire just destroying the land. And Amos prays, oh God, don't do that. We're so small. How would we survive that? And God relents. And then God gave him a vision of a plumb line. I don't know if you know what a plumb line is, but it's a weight, a burden, really, at the end of a line that shows whether things are straight or not, like a wall. And Amos can't pray against this because it's so clear when you line the plumb line, and the plumb line, I believe, is pointing straight to Jesus. Who's the standard? Jesus Christ Himself, perfection. And you hold that up against the wall of Israel, and it's so clear you can't fix it. You've got to destroy it and build something new. And when God held up the plumb line against my life, He wasn't, oh, Lance needs some renovations. He was like, oh, we got to kill that, and we got to start over. This guy needs to be born again. When God holds the plumb line against your life, He's not saying, oh, almost. He's like saying, no, not going to do it. Someone else is going to have to do it for him, namely the plumb line. That's Jesus Christ Himself. So He gives him this vision. It's clear that this is not going to be a renovation project. This is a total destruction and rebuild. And then He gives him a vision of summer fruit. And that vision is, this is a very ripe fruit. And saying it's past time. I've been patient, but there's going to be a famine in your world, a famine of my words. You're not going to hear from me for a while. And the last vision was the Lord standing beside the altar. This is right before, by the way, the whole book has been just a series of bad messages, bad news, over and over again. Bad news, bad news, bad news. But God never ends there. He begins there, but He never ends on bad news. So Amos 9 through 11, hope. This hope is about what God is going to do. Not that Israel's going to fix themselves. Not that they're going to finally just say, oh, well, we're going to be better. He's saying, no, I'm going to do something. I'm going to rebuild you. I'm going to make you return to Israel. This weight that pulls down the plumb line, the weight that condemns us, the weight that causes us to buckle will be all placed on Jesus at some point on the cross. That's the burden. And you can't bear it, and I can't bear it. Amos couldn't bear it, but Jesus did. There is a light, God says. I love you. I'll be with you. I'll bring you back no matter how far you've gone. I'll forgive you. Have faith in me. And in the New Testament, this last part of Amos, Amos 9:11 through 15, is actually quoted by James in the book of Acts. James is the half-brother of Jesus. And he's looking back, and he's saying this. He says, afterward, this is what God said to Israel, afterward I will return and restore the fallen house of David. I will rebuild the ruins and restore it so that the rest of humanity might seek the Lord, including the Gentiles, all those that I've called to be mine. James is looking back and he's saying the gospel has always been the gospel. God has always been gracious. God has always been reaching out to you and me. He knows your life. It may be hard for you to look at your own reality. God already knows it. He sees you at your worst moment and loves you anyway. He saw you on your worst day and loves you anyway. I know that about you because that's what God says. I will bring you back. I will forgive you. I will restore you. Even the Gentiles. Now, Gentiles wasn't mentioned in Amos. It was Edomites. That was their most hated group that they didn't like to hang out with. And so James replaces Edomites, the most hated, with us, Gentiles. I don't know if that makes you feel good, but that's what he did. So he's saying God loves everybody. Wake up to reality, James is saying, and the reality itself is Jesus. That's actually how our church got its name. For these rules, somebody's messing up on these slides, and I think it might be me. For these rules are only shadows of the reality yet to come, and Christ himself is that reality. So wake up to reality. Well, how should we do that? Number one, stand out. Stand out as a believer. Not with your radio station presets or your Bible at the coffee shop and an Instagram post, but with how you treat the barista? Barista. I got it right and wrong. How you serve other people. How do you serve other people? How do you meet needs? How do you stand out the way that God would if he walked among? If Jesus Christ walked into a coffee shop, or if Jesus Christ was on 370 and people were taking left-hand turns on the red, how would Jesus respond? I don't know. Maybe he would stop their car and then just point at them. That would be great. Stand out, because when you go to work, when you're a lawyer and you're in the courtroom, you're not just a lawyer. You're showing everybody what Jesus Christ would look like right there. When you're a teacher, when you're a salesman, you're not just that. You have this chance to show people, to not blend in, to stand out, not in the ways that we think of standing out, not standing out with a sign, not shouting at people, not rage posting on social media to try to make people feel guilty, but actually the way that Jesus did it. Serve others sacrificially. Don't see people as things to be used. There's a couple of ways you can stand out that we think are big. Number one, bless people around you. Find ways to surprise people around you with a glimpse of what it's like when Jesus is in charge. That could be a text. It could be a card. It could be a ride when they needed it. Sam Reimer blessed me yesterday when my generator fell out of the trailer of my food trailer on 370. A lot of fun. God provided Sam right then, right there. He pulled up. He said, "Hey, how's your day going?" "Not great, Sam," but he helped me. Incredible ways to bless people. I think there's so many opportunities, guys, and sometimes we live lives with blinders on. Surprise people with how it looks when Jesus is king. It's a lot of fun. We're going to give you a chance to do that on June 29th when we say we're going to have church everywhere, reality everywhere. We're not going to meet here, but we're going to give you a chance to, and some people have been asking us, do I have to have a church service at home? No, you don't have to preach or anything like that, but can you cook a burger? Wow, no one can cook a burger. That was the most silence in the whole sermon right there. It's like, no, can you believe he said cook a burger? I'm sending the email. Oh, hot dogs? Okay, I didn't know. So, okay. So June 29th, we're going to be meeting together at home. So stand out in your neighborhood. And then today, you can be baptized. There's a lot of backstory and a lot of reasons, I'm sure, why you haven't been baptized yet. None of that matters today. We want to celebrate. If you've believed in Jesus, you believe that he is who he says he is, that he can do what he says he can do, and that he did it for you, then be baptized. And the last one is speak out. Speak up, sorry. There is something costly about telling the truth in a world that loves lies. You know it, I know it. And I love what Walter Brueggemann said. He was born in Nebraska, a prophetic voice, really, and a great theologian. Here's what he says. He says, like the ancient prophets, we are dispatched to the good work entrusted to us. It's the work of peacemaking. It's the work of truth-telling. It's the work of justice-doing. It's a good work, but it requires our resolve to stay it, even in the face of the forces to the contrary that are sure to prevail for a season. I love that. That's our job. That's the work. That's like Ephesians 2:10, the work that God gave you in advance before he even saved you. And learning how to speak the truth in love to a culture that loves lies is actually really difficult to do. I think it requires a whole lot of time hanging out with Jesus. So before you speak up, please hang out with Jesus, because we see a lot of people doing it in a way that does more damage than good. So speak up, but speak up with a voice that you've learned from hanging out with Jesus. I wonder if you guys have any questions today. The shirts needed one thing, to have Jesus printed on the back. Oh. All right, okay. Well, you design that one, and next year we'll wear it, okay? Sounds good. During this series, this verse should be considered, understood, and applauded. 2 Peter 1:20. Above all, you must understand that no prophecy of Scripture came about by the prophet's own interpretation of things. Yes, that's a good verse. So anyone want to take a picture of that one? I will. Why does the Bible tell slaves to obey their masters? It feels like God is condoning slavery. Couple of things on this one. It's funny how words can shift and change in meaning. Now, slavery's always been slavery. I mean, slavery always means one thing at least. This person is in control of your time and where you live, and they kind of own you as property. Interestingly enough, women early on in society were seen as property as well. So you could give them an inheritance, and they were passed on from like a dead son-in-law to the living one, and so or the living relative. And so people have been seen as property. A couple of things that happened in the Old Testament is defeated countries. Instead of killing these men, they would say, okay, we're going to capture you, and you're going to be enslaved to us. It wasn't the best, but it was regulated by God. And then there were people who would say to someone, I owe you too much of a debt. I owe you too much. Can I attach myself to you as a slave and work off this debt? And at the end of 7 years, they would be freed. And it was the year of Jubilee. So yes, there was something called ownership, and there's always been that throughout history. And it's always been less than ideal. And then God comes in and says, I don't want you to divorce, but if you divorce is never God's will, and yet he regulates it. Divorce is never God's will, but he regulates it. Slavery is never God's will, but then he regulates it. And he regulates it, why? To cut it down at the root. And this happens throughout Scripture. As he says, do it this way. Slaves, obey your masters. Instead of saying that they own you, I own you. So do all of your work as if you're doing it to me. And then an unbelievably bad thing happened. And God's always condemned this. People started kidnapping other people and forcing them to be slaves. God, throughout Scripture, it's called chattel slavery. Throughout Scripture, God has always said, if you do that, you deserve to be executed. If you do that, you forfeit your own life. Throughout Scripture, it's never, and that's basically what happened in the United States and what happened in the UK, and still amazingly happens to this day. Sex trafficking is this. All sorts of other sort of slavery happens, and God is not saying, oh yeah, that's good. No. So I'm going the long way around, but Jesus comes on the scene, and then Paul follows Jesus, and Paul writes this letter to a man, Philemon, I think, and he's writing about Onesimus, a slave, and he's saying, treat him like a brother. He's your slave, I get it. It wasn't like chattel slavery, it was like more like he had a debt. He's treat him like a brother. And as soon as Paul said, masters, treat them like your siblings, immediately he lays an axe to the whole premise of slavery itself, which is all of us are of equal value. And as soon as Christians start to see everyone as equal value, slavery becomes impossible because people aren't to be used, they're to be loved. You're to sacrifice for them instead of expecting them to sacrifice for you. I mean, we have, in some ways, we have slavery when a corporation is mistreating its own workers. I mean, that does happen. And so God is never pleased with any of that, taking advantage of someone. So I hope that I went a long way around. I hope that helps a little bit. He never condoned that type of slavery. Fundamental attribution era, greatly impacting our society right now. Many families are afraid to step out of their own homes. If only we would love and do life like Jesus, with grace, with understanding, with connection, instead of with fear, greed, and hate. How can you connect today's sermon with reality today? Well, dang it, I hoped I did that. Crap. So did I say crap? Oh, I said it again. Well, there you go. Crap. There's 3. Dang it. I thought I had done that. So what I'm saying is, this does look exactly like us. And it looks exactly like me. I can look around at people and discover and know what they're doing wrong. I'm really good at it. What I'm not really good at is saying, God, would you take a look inside my heart? Or maybe even somebody that I love say, hey, what's it like to be on the other side of me? Can you tell me that? Oh, man, that's dangerous. That's a dangerous question. Can you tell me what it's like to hang out with me? Do that today. That would be a great application. Just ask the people around you, what am I like for real? You want to know what you're like, let a generator drop out of your trailer doing about 40 on 370. You'll find out you're not as spiritual as you thought you were, right? So I think that's how it connects. Everybody in this room right now is dealing with your own backstory and a temptation to tell everybody why you are the way you are. And yet other people have faced the same type of circumstances and didn't turn out that way. Why don't we take all of that, submit it to Christ, and say, God, what can you do with this? Instead of, here's the reason why I am who I am. Because I think God can actually redeem all of that and renew all of that. So I love that. By the way, the fundamental attribution area is when you pull out in traffic in front of somebody, it's because you've got reasons. You know, I'm late, or I didn't see you coming. And when they pull out in front of you, it's because they're an idiot, right? That's the fundamental attribution error. Oh, it's a new one. You said if you want to make someone mad, speak the truth in love. But in speaking in love, shouldn't we strive to lift up and restore rather than agitate? Yes, but has anyone ever told you that you had like lettuce between your teeth? I mean, sometimes if you're humble, you go, oh, thank you. But sometimes if you're like me, you go, jerk. And I have no reason for saying that. It's just that I don't like the truth sometimes. You are not responsible for how the truth makes someone else feel, unless you didn't say it in love. You're not responsible for the truth and how it makes somebody feel. In a world filled with videos of I hate these. Republicans destroy Democrat, a feminist crushes men's right. Isn't it dangerous to want to be right rather than to want to seek truth? No, it's not dangerous to want to be right. Doesn't everyone want to be right? Does everyone in here just want to be wrong about everything? No, it's dangerous when you think that your rightness somehow makes you better than anyone else. Don't get angry at the people who were just like you 5 minutes ago. How come we discover a new truth and then start pointing, like I'm 2 days off of Diet Dr. Pepper. I didn't tell you guys that, but that's who I am. So now, is it my job to find people drinking Diet Dr. Pepper and going, that's killing you? No, it's not. Don't let your rightness make you so superior that you're talking to people that 5 minutes ago were you. And now you're like lording it over them. That makes zero sense. The fact of the matter is that everyone in this room needs to look eye to eye with everyone and say, yeah, you're like me, aren't you? Yeah, you have a temptation to be selfish just like me, don't you? You've got that in you. But you've been rescued by Jesus, just like me. So why don't we tell the truth to each other? We can make it. Don't tell the truth to everybody, right? This is not just you with a megaphone in Old Market. These are the people that you love, that you're invested in, that you've got refrigerator rights for. You've built a relational bridge that's strong enough to carry over the weight of truth that you've got to carry. Then do that. And it's not about being right. If the bridge is out and I see somebody driving toward the river and I don't try to stop them, that's not love. And it's not about being right. It's about loving them. And that's the way. If it feels good and you love doing it, then you're probably doing it wrong. But if it's something that's a burden, like it was for Amos, if it's a weight, then not doing it, that's not kind. It's not loving. Telling the truth is a very kind and loving thing to do, and we need to do it more. We're going to do a series called Obsexed in August, and I can't wait for it, but I also know that we're going to be telling truth that might not be popular truth, and I'm okay with that. I got to be okay with that. All right, so we're going to sing, and then we're going to baptize, and